Still on labor-related matters, the African continent's younger workforce is seeking balance in the labor landscape. A global study by PWC has revealed that this group prioritizes fair pay, fulfillment, flexibility, and a collaborative working environment. According to this report, 81% of respondents made up of millennials and Gen Zs are also excited about growth opportunities in the evolving world of work. People and organization leader at PWC Africa, Dayalan Govender, speaks to us about this. Thank you so much for your time. An interesting study of findings here, talking to us about Africa's youngest workforce. Talk to us about the changes, shifts that we are seeing at this pivotal moment.
Jimmy, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you and your listeners. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this show. Yeah, it's quite interesting that PwC hosts this major survey on an annual basis, and certainly you'll be seeing some shifts in the trends as well. What we've done is we've taken the global report, which has been launched, and we've extracted an Africa kind of outlook on it. Africa was involved as part of the survey. There were a number of countries, including South Africa, Morocco, Nigeria, Algeria, and Kenya. So certainly we start to look at, take a deep dive into the sentiments as it relates to the African workforce, the young workforce. Yeah, there are some shifts. I think the shifts, we're living in a post-COVID world, but there's a sense of feeling insecure. And I guess there's rapid changes happening. We've seen many organizations start to pivot, start to change, start to restructure and so forth. And it's giving young employees a sense of uncertainty about their future. At the same time, they're quite excited about what the future holds. But there is a bit of edginess, nervousness in terms of how do I cope with all these changes that are happening, from a digital transformation, from hybrid ways of working, in terms of new operating models, new ways of working in terms of how do we engage with our customers and so forth. So that's a big trend, and making note of the fact that Africa would have the hugest youth population across the globe by 2030. Almost half the population would be between the ages of 18 to 24, trying to enter the job market.
What I found also fascinating within the study, Dayalan, is the issue around this group and cohort seeking fair pay. How do they define that? Because that's not necessarily a new agenda.
No, absolutely. I think you're quite right to me, because fair pay has always come up as the top of the agenda. And in terms of needing to, to be paid fairly, in the South African context, it's not easy as well, given some of the financial constraints that organizations find themselves in. And at the same time, we must be mindful of automation coming on board, and that means job security in terms of potential losses of jobs is on the cards as well. But getting back to the point on fair pay, when we compare to global, I see global's a little more comfortable in terms of the fair pay. From an Africa perspective, our youngsters, our employees are concerned, and I guess it's twofold for me. One is the increasing cost of living, and we've seen a lot of that in the South African context, in Africa context. But at the same time, what was startling for me is that almost 40 to 45% of the respondents from Africa feel they don't have sufficient money at the end of the month after paying last year, but the shift has moved forward in terms of beyond paying the bills. So sometimes it begs the questions whether we living to work or we working to live. And I think that's what we see happening at this stage. I guess it also begs for organizations to look at some of the non-monetary kind of incentives. How do they keep their staff engaged, challenged, and at the same time retain them? Because you've got so much of money to go around, and money is not the only differentiator. We've seen that from the report, that the youngsters also looking for purpose-driven organizations. They're looking for opportunities to grow their skills, and they're looking to employers and organizations to offer them those opportunities.
As a parting shot, we must also talk about remote work. How is that faring? It is one that has been widely welcomed since the times of COVID-19, but a little bit difficult to adjust and maneuver when it comes to where we are now, getting back into an office setting maybe, and corporates not taking too kindly to the new idea of work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real conundrum that we face. I work with many organizations as PwC, and we see many organizations in many industries are facing this conundrum. I guess it's a balancing act. I mean, what's important is that you need to look at productivity and performance in relation to the types of work that you have, whether it's virtual, whether it's hybrid. You got to make sure that you still, got your finger on the pulse in terms of high productivity and performance. But where organizations are battling about is in terms of coming back to work. How many days should employees coming back to work? Can I monitor and manage them in terms of their performance? I guess organizations need to revisit the digital assets that they have. Because if you're working virtually, you must be able to perform your roles and responsibilities in a diligent fashion and effective fashion. But it's quite interesting. The one comment what I'd like to make is that, with the virtual ways of working and changing ways of hybrid working ways, we've seen that also productivity had increased initially, but it's coming at a price around well-being, because we're seeing a lot of people, you get up and you work, whereas if you had to drive to work, you've got the time, you engage with fellow employees and so forth. So you have some time breathing space. We see a lot of people working longer hours. Yes, the productivity is great, but what it's coming at is an expense around well-being. We've seen an increase in mental well-being issues starting to creep in. We're seeing people going to depression. We're seeing youngsters that are really taking a toll in terms of burnout as well. So certainly it's coming at a price. And I think organizations need to be mindful of that. And maybe the last comment is that you've got to revisit your policies, procedures, because those ones that you had was existing at a point in time when people were full-time in office. But if you go hybrid, you go virtual, you got to relook at your assets, as I said, in order to make work easier. You also need to look at the policies and procedures. You also need to look at how you incentivize in a different way and form and shape as well.
Thank you so much for your input. Dayalan Govender is with PWC Africa, talking us through that workforce report, highlighting what it is that the younger labor is looking for, particularly on the African continent.